Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. I am Rich Maletto. You can find me in the Xbox machine at Fantasy Bosco. As always, I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Sean Engel, who you can find on X at SeanE247. I don't even like calling it X. Dude, Elon put out there, X is a better name, right? No, it's a horrible name, dude. Like, what? We're just going to start giving letters as names and stuff? Like, I don't know, man. It's still Twitter. Twitter and tweets sounds way better than X and repost, but who am I
100% agree.
This podcast, the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, is brought to you by FantasyGuru.com, part of the Elite Plus platform. At FantasyGuru.com, you can find all the content Sean and I put out there, not just racing, but we cover everything at Fantasy Guru, from basketball, baseball, horse racing, MMA, golf, of course, football. Football's around the corner, kids. I don't know what to tell you, but the Fantasy Guru draft guide comes out very soon. We start dropping articles here in the next week or so, and we got football content from here all the way through the season. Football season is here. If you haven't been paying attention, you better start cramming now.
Yeah, and you're actually a contributor towards the Fantasy Guru Draft Guide, aren't you, Rich?
I am. I have the last few years, they've had me do a scoring dependency article, which is very in-depth. I take a lot of pride in that. It's a lot of fun. Jeff loves it. He gives me a lot of praise for it, so thank you very much, Jeff. So I got that, and this year we've got a few more. I've got a couple of draft strategy articles. We've got our staff mock draft going on right now, and once the draft guide drops, I will drop the link so you can follow along. I'll have some questions of our staff members and their picks. And new this year, we're going to have a Fantasy Football 101 article that I'll be putting together for all the rookies out there that want to give fantasy football a try. We'll give you some of the lowdown and the breakdown and the simple stuff, so you don't get confused on what a wide receiver 2 is versus an RB1 and want to know what kind of gibberish we're talking. So I'm looking forward to it, Sean. Man, you know all the work. You've got all the podcasts you'll be working on with everybody. I mean, you may be behind the curtain, so to speak, but you have a ton behind the draft guide as well.
Oh, yeah, that is for sure, as it is. It encompasses a lot of the Fantasy Guru-based content overall, and it's going to be real fun to see it and see how the subs react to it. Just all the different content and information that Fantasy Guru puts together. It really is quite something.
I tell everybody we're the best bang for your buck. They won't find more content anywhere. I'd argue, even if you're just a sports fan and just like some insight, knowledge, breakdowns, it's worth the subscriptions to follow along. You won't miss. You can't watch every NFL game. Jeff does. I watch about 98% of them. Tyler Russ Armando watches about the same. We will have you covered on all of that. I think Ray watches every baseball game. I don't know how, but I feel like somehow he does. And while Phil doesn't do a bunch of baseball content, he drops all that fun stuff in Discord too. We got Fincy dropping all sorts of dimes for everybody. I mean, look, we really do have a who's who out there in the industry. And hey, head over to FantasyGuru.com. The 50% special's gone. I hate to tell you all, it's gone. You missed out on an incredible deal. I stand by the price it's at, but you missed out on an incredible deal. The MVP game time package, I believe, is still at the special rate for 12 months for $39.99. You also get it with any MLB package you would buy at this point, which Ray and Patio Joe, they got you covered in depth on the baseball stuff. But if you head over to FantasyGuru.com, click the subscribe button in the top right corner, pick whatever plan works for you. I can almost guarantee you we have a plan that works for you depending on what kind of info and content you want.
That is for sure. And you know what? Hey, I'd say it's definitely worth the price of admission because you're going to win it all back anyway. Might as well go get it.
In all fairness, Sean, we already got you that money back in racing the first month and a half of the season for $40. So we've done our part. I don't know what to tell you guys if you haven't subscribed. We're still dropping. Hey, I was on fire with Indy 500 bets this weekend, man. Coke 600, not so much. Truck had a little bit of love out there between you and I. We did all right. Coke 600, and I will say the rain shortened event kind of put a damper on things. Things were trending in the right direction. I didn't hit Bell hard enough. I apologize for that. Mark Hogan, I'm with you on narratives. I was busy watching Indy. Had I seen the hour-long special on Bell's, memorial to the soldier they represented, I would have been all in on Bell too, like Mark was. He should have been a better. I do apologize for that. My problem with Bell lately is he's been fast. He's been all over the place. I just had the things coming together. Unlike the RFK guys where things were trending in the right direction, we were all over the place with Bell. He runs well there. I just didn't really know what to do with it. Like I said, narratives, chase the narratives, chase the stories. I missed it. My apologies. But, man, we had you covered on Indy 500, man. We had that nailed. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. And let's not even forget, there were a couple Xfinity Series bets that did also hit this past weekend that were submitted in Discord as well. So no matter what the series, we're always trying to find something to hit, and usually more often than not, something always does. But, Rich, what
everything did but the Coke 600, man. You were money all over the place. Everything did except the Coke 600. That falls on my shoulders, and I do apologize. But as my dad said, it was a rain-shortened event, so he's giving me a pass.
Well, to be fair, I'll give you this too. The Truck Series bets in Discord did not exactly go to plan either, so.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
At least the Discord ones did not go into plan. But
we had him in the article, though. There was some overlap. And hey, let's remind everybody, you typically don't do trucks. I typically don't do Cup. And I will say this. We both watch all the events, okay? But there is something to be said about doing the write-ups, doing the deeper digging into the numbers, where we go. I have certain things I look for in the Truck Series. I watch it all the time. I'm in it. I'm talking about it so much. That's why some of that was highlighted in the early article. When Sean and I kind of back and forth on Xfinity, I'll tell you, I do not do as good of a job on Xfinity as Sean does. And as we had proved this weekend, I am lacking on the Cup side. I'm going to have to up my game a little bit. I think I can and will, but there's something to be said about the lack of practice. And Jeff talks about it. You got to practice. You got to do the lineups. There's a reason Sean and I continue to do lineups, whether they're high dollar or low dollar entries. You got to have the practice. You got to stay informed. You got to be on top of everything that's going on. So, hey, it wasn't our strongest week, but overall it was still solid. So, shout out OG. I know you said you don't need the shout outs, but dude, maybe we should have you on to I know you said there's no secret to your system. It's you take our content, you look for the best lines you can get, you save up. If you win early in the week, you save some free bets and chase the low odds with the free bets just to turn it into real money. It's brilliant. It's smart. It's a savvy approach. Got to figure out a way to help share that, because I tell you what, OG, you give us a lot of joy out of seeing the winnings you come up with. And I know not every week it's a big green week, but you seem to really put them together. And honestly, shout out to my wife. I had all those Indy 500 bets. She pulled up the line, started talking through them with me, and she basically narrowed it down to 3 bets, and we won all 3 bets. So some of this is on you guys to take the information and really pick through and what makes the most sense based on the lines you shop. OG and my wife Jen did the same thing. They shopped lines and said, well, these lines make more sense. I get you like that bet, but let's chase this line instead. Instead of going top 5, let's go top 10. Brilliant. She did an excellent job. So hat tip to her, hat tip to OG. Hey, we got the preliminaries out of the way, Sean. So let's dig in, because I know you've got a lot of stuff you want to talk about. I'm here to sit back and let you do your thing, bro. Let's hit it.
All right. Let's just first, we were kind of touching on this, but let's recap the weekend in NASCAR here. Let's just start with the Truck Series race first before we get into anything here. The Truck Series race had Corey Heim dominating most of the race, but Nick Sanchez, he ended up prevailing late. Got some good pit stops there. His crew just delivered. He gets his second win of the year. Heim ended up driving through the field late, and he almost came back to win, but pit road problems were his undoing. But then, well, we mentioned it earlier on in the show. Heim ended up getting disqualified because it was found that he had 3 loose lug nuts after the race, not being tight. So disqualification there, Rich.
There's a reason some of these crew members are in the Truck Series. And I mean, no disrespect to David Gilliland and the team he's put together there at Tricon. There's a difference between Cup level, truck level. That's driver, that's equipment, that's mechanics, that's pit crew, okay? There was a lack of communication on that Heim pit stop, and it bit them. not saying it wouldn't have happened in Cup, but a really good crew chief would have just stopped. Heim, wait for me. Wait, stop. Just wait for me. Because at that point, your bed's made, okay? Hit the rest of the lugs, get the other lug nut on, because all you did was you still lost. You probably would have started because it was yellow flag. So you probably would have started maybe a couple more rows back, but that's about it. You were already coming out at the tail end of the lead lap cars. There's no need at that point in the race to not make sure everything is tight, because all you did is they don't need it, but he just cost himself another top 5, another top 10, a bunch of points. They don't really need it, but boy, I tell you what, Sean, if they end up losing, the championship by a smidge, these points could have made the difference. I understand the last race, it's just where you finish, but say he's short on making it to that final round, this race is going to be the culprit why. And a 10th place finish with 4 lugs or 5 lugs is a much better finish than a disqualification.
Yeah, that is very true. But let's talk about some other drivers that had some days that ended up being very interesting for them. Let's start with Caden Honeycutt there. He looked strong. He had arguably one of the top 3 fastest trucks throughout that race, but he also had pit road issues that preventing him from getting the win and even staying close to the front. He still ended up coming back with a top 10 result in the 7th position there, Rich.
He was fun to watch. The top 5 bet I thought was a home run. I really did. Loved the odds. He was there. He looked good. Let's get this guy on a full-time ride. And maybe Nice is the place for him. Maybe Nice is for him. Nice has been kind of one of these. Some years they've been, right in the conversation as one of the top teams. Other years they haven't. They clearly are trending in the right direction. We saw that with Ross Chastain's win. We're going to see a different driver this week. You'll talk about in a little bit, but keep Nice in mind, the number 45 truck, but I really want to see this Honeycutt kid in a ride somewhere, man.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They were mentioning it on the broadcast that he was kind of having some shades of Carson Hocevar when he used to drive for Nice back then, too.
He kind of did, man.
It's crazy considering that Carson was even in the booth for a little bit while there.
Right.
So. Right. Next up, let's talk about Christian Eckes here. He had some alternator issues that ended up preventing him from really climbing his way towards the front regularly just based on how fast the truck was. But he still ended up making use of pit strategy. He ended up staying out at one point. He got the lead from there, was looking very good in clean air. He ultimately ended up finishing inside the top 10. And you know what? That now still makes it so he only has one race without a top 10 finish. And he's now the only Truck Series driver to have led in every Truck Series race this year, Rich.
Spoiler alert, I've got him highlighted and I'm pushing him hard in the overview article. And I fully expect him to be a main focal point for the truck article this week. I don't care what his record has been at any of the other tracks. It was unfortunate. He was a chalk play for DFS. He was so fast before they had that little incident in practice. Man, I had such high hopes for Eckes. I thought we were going to see an Eckes-Heim show come down at the end. Then it was going to be a Honeycutt-Heim show. I'm glad Sanchez got in there when he did. But look, this team and this driver with Christian Eckes, they're going to be a force for the championship all the way the rest of the year.
That is definitely for sure. I mean, he's now the only driver that in any respective series, a little spoiler alert for later, but to have led in each one of the races that they've participated in now at this point, since another one of those said streaks ended this past week.
It's not a big stat that shows up in stat books, but trust me when I say that's impressive. That tells you the team has speed. The team has speed everywhere, and they have a driver capable of winning everywhere. That's a big deal.
Definitely, for sure. So I'm going to go through some of the lap leaders here. There only ended up being 5 drivers that led laps in this past weekend's truck race. Corey Heim, he dominated, led the most at 72. Christian Eckes led 37 laps. Tanner Gray, the pole sitter, led 11 laps. Nick Sanchez, the winner, ended up leading 9. And then there was Chase Purdy, who ended up leading 5 laps there, Rich.
So I covered, we kind of went over all those guys. Tanner looked rather impressive. We were thinking more Taylor, but Tanner looked impressive. Chase Purdy, make a little note. They're starting to turn the page. We've been waiting for things like this from Chase Purdy for a while. Hasn't really come to fruition. The last few races it has. So we're going to have to – Chase Purdy's back on the radar.
He still ended up even though he dealt with that tire going down and he fell back into the field, he still was able to climb his way back into the top 15 with a 13th place finish there, Rich.
Exactly. That's the stuff they weren't doing earlier this year. So now we're seeing the bounce back ability. Now we're seeing some of the speed we were hoping for from the team he's with. Like I said, it's starting to come together for him. Chase Purdy was a driver Kyle Busch found, so that means something to me. He's been kind of a disappointment. He really has the last probably year and a half. So it's time. It's time. Let's see what the young man has.
We're going to probably see more, especially considering he's in Aspire trucks, and Spire's one of the best teams in trucks this year.
Exactly.
All right, now I'm going to quickly just drop some other names here that had some standout finishes. We mentioned Stuart Friesen last week. He got his first top 10 of the year. And now this past weekend, he finishes second, and that's his first top 5 finish of the year.
And spoiler alert, he's really good where we go this upcoming week. So it's about time they got it turned around. Friesen, again, we've been kind of ignoring him. Last couple of weeks, he's been like kind of there if we're looking at. Let's hope he's low owned because he might be a savvy play this week.
Could be very interesting to watch. Speaking of very interesting to watch, we mentioned Nice Motorsports. Caden Honeycutt was actually not the highest finishing Nice Motorsports driver this past weekend. Instead, it was Matt Mills in the 4th position who got his first top 5 of the year and just his second ever in the Truck Series.
I'll take heat for that. I wasn't expecting it. Matt Mills has never been in good equipment. He's had a cool story, coming up through the ranks. Better start doing some digging on Matt Mills. That's all I'm saying.
We got Jake Garcia in the 6th position, getting his first top 10 finish of the year, right there.
About time. Hey, and don't skip over his teammate here, Ben Rhodes, finishing 5th. We take that for granted. 2 years ago, we'd be like, yes, so that maybe the crew chief change is starting to come into play here, Sean, because the last couple of weeks, all of a sudden, the speed seems to be back again.
That's true, especially considering that him and Jake Garcia swapped crew chiefs, and now both of them are 6th or better this past weekend.
Right, exactly.
So something to take notice there. And I'm also going to point out about Connor Jones. He ended up finishing 11th, but that's a new career best finish ever in the Truck Series for him.
He just needs to buckle up. I'm still giving him grief for the whole, get out of the car, the power steering's broke. But he's shown speed. I've mentioned Connor Jones multiple times this year in the articles. He's shown speed. This was a big deal for them to finish just outside the top 10.
Yes, and then we also just going to point out Dean Thompson. He ended up scoring another top 10 finish in the 9th position there.
I don't know what to do with that guy.
And Connor Mosak, who ended up driving the Spire number 7, ended up finishing in the 8th position there. We know that 7 truck continues to knock off top 10s.
And I'll give a hat tip to Spencer Boyd. This is why we love to use Spencer Boyd for DFS, especially when he qualifies 30th or later. I don't know what the guy does. He just finishes races and somehow moves up 5 spots. It's like clockwork. That's just what he does. And he's constantly like a $5,300 price.
Boom. There you go right there. That's enough about the Truck Series. Let's move on to the Xfinity Series race this past weekend there, where Chase Elliott, Cup Series regular, he ended up going down into that Hendrick number 17. He ended up winning by just having a spare set of fresh tires, used track position from pit strategy to score to win. But boy, oh boy, did Brandon Jones give it his all at the end and gave him a run for his money, finishing 2nd. And I was rooting for Brandon Jones because I actually had a bet on him. He was plus 6,000 to win, 60-1 odds. And here I go. And here we go again with another driver that ended up looking really good, getting really close in the Xfinity Series to winning on 1.5 miles for me. And then just second place heartbreak again, Rich.
I didn't know you had a ticket on him because I was cheering for Chase because I had Chase in bold in the overview article as an early line to bet because I thought it was a soft line for where it probably should be. So I was loving life. I had no idea you had a 60-1 ticket on Brandon Jones, or I'd been cheering for you, bro.
Yeah, especially because that car, it went through all sorts of damage, all sorts of different. It got involved in an incident or two, I believe, as well, Brandon Jones, and he still was able to show speed in that car all the way up to second, and even then was catching Elliott at the end.
Well, and JRM has, you and I talked about it a few times. They just seem to be off a little bit up to this point. All of a sudden, it's starting to come together for all of them. The only one that I'm still waiting for that shoe to drop, so to speak, is Sammy Smith.
But, you talked about Junior Motorsports. They had a banner day this past weekend in the Xfinity Series because 3 of the 4 cars ended up finishing inside the top 5 there. And that included Sammy Smith with the third place finish right there.
Right. That's the one I've been waiting on. Allgaier could have been there, dude. I mean, he had the speed. He got wrecked.
Yeah, just wasn't meant to be with him, just like it wasn't meant to be for RCR as well with their full-time drivers, as Austin Hill and Jesse Love both finished 25th or worse. The only bright spot was Kyle Busch getting that 6th place finish there, Rich.
Well, and Hill was competitive, so they were there. Love's got some learning to do. It's certain tracks, he's definitely shown the raw speed and the raw talent. Other tracks, not so much. Austin Hill has consistently been that top 5, top 10 every single week. I'm a little twisted on what exactly is the difference, what he did to Custer and what Kyle Busch did to Stenhouse, other than I get it was an exhibition race, but the safety and stuff still comes into play. Charlotte is bigger, faster, but I'm a little twisted on that. At the same time,
we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here.
I'm sorry.
We'll get to the whole Austin Hill, Cole Custer deal later on because there's some repercussions that did come out of that, which we'll get into. But for now, I do want to also get into the lap leaders here. Sam Mayer ended up leading the most laps, 44. Over Justin Allgaier, who led 40. Then you had Kyle Busch at 34, Ty Gibbs at 27, Chase Elliott, who won at 18. Jesse Love still ended up leading a couple laps at 14. Sheldon Creed led 9. Noah Gragson led 9 in the first race for Brett Jones Racing. And Kyle Sieg was able to sneak off with 5 laps led there, Rich.
Yeah, and Sieg, man, they're fun to cheer for, the Sieg brothers. You just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, you really don't know.
I'm just saying. I mean, there's some times when it's like, woo, and then other times you're like, what just happened?
Okay, let's get into the standout finisher list here real quick. What are some of the names that stand out to you here, Rich, that we have on this list here?
Well, Dinger coming in 5th because he has not looked good all year. 2 years ago, Dinger was dominating everything. This year, he's been an afterthought. We're coming up to a road race this week. Vegas really likes him. I'm kind of on the fence because we haven't seen it, even though I like his teammate in the same equipment a little better. Maybe they're finally starting to put together. This 5th place finish is a big deal for that team right now for how they've been performing. Kyle Busch, hey, this is why I don't like betting Kyle Busch when they give us some silly low odds, man. You can't assume that, especially when you got a couple other cup regulars stepping down. Hey, Josh Williams, hat tip. Ryan Sieg deserves a hat tip. Shane Van Gisbergen, another 15th place finish. I understand the guy.
7th one of the year in the top 15.
Right. I understand he won at Chicago in the cup race, but folks, understand running ovals is not this guy's cup of tea yet. He's been showing out a little bit. You can tell he's learning and not pushing it too far. As we get through this season, I expect him. We might start seeing some more excitement from Mr. SVG. Those are kind of the ones that really jump out to me. Nothing. Ryan Sieg, definitely a nice hat tip there. Kyle Weatherman, almost a top 10. That was nice to see. There's another guy, him and Honeycutt, I just wish would get some stable, good equipment under them, man.
Yeah, Weatherman is one of those drivers that he tends to outperform the equipment he's in more often than not and just get good finishes out of it. That DGM racing team, they've been about, you can say a mid-pack team in the Xfinity Series, but he's out there going forth and getting top 15s and competing for top 15s on a regular basis overall there, Rich. I agree with you on that one.
I'm with you, bro.
So Josh Williams, you mentioned about his 8th place finish. That was his best finish of the year so far.
It's fun seeing him in some better equipment. I keep forgetting that he's in better equipment, and, hoping for a top 10, top 15 is well within, a range of outcomes we can expect.
That is for sure. Noah Gragson in 10th. I mentioned it there. That's the first ever start for Rhett Jones Racing in the Xfinity Series. I know they got that support from Stewart-Haas. That definitely helped and play a part into it. But yeah, still impressive there.
We could use a little more Noah in Xfinity, in my opinion.
That is for sure, too. And I'm also just going to mention this, too, just because it's also another best finish of the year. But Dawson Cram ended up finishing 22nd. That's his best finish of the year so far as well.
But did he have a bumper thrown at him? Or is that Cam Waters? Maybe I'm getting Cam
No,
Waters.
you had it right. It was Dawson Cram that had the bumper thrown at him. But I don't believe Joey Gase was in the field this week in order to deliver that to him. So there you go. Let's quickly go through the Cup Series race now here, Rich.
Can we boo it first? Can we boo NASCAR first?
Gladly.
Boo! As a race fan that's been stoked at tracks, don't give me this, well, we didn't want to end at 3 a.m. I have been at a rain-shortened event that didn't run and didn't get out of the stupid parking lot till almost 2 a.m., okay? And the race was called and everything else. So don't give me that nonsense. We're already soaked. We've already seen half the show. Get us the rest of the damn show. It's a holiday the next day, and you got lights. Don't treat me like I'm freaking 4.
And also, you've ran races well past 3 a.m. before, NASCAR. You could have just waited it out, then people still would have been able to watch it. It's a holiday weekend, too. I mean, there's just so many circumstances. They could have just extended this race. And I did hear at one point, somebody was talking about this. One of the reporters were saying about how they were talking with Joe Gibbs, and they said they were about to call the drivers back to the cars in 15 minutes, and then they just decided to call it instead. Very disappointed with that one. Not really cool. Mother Nature was the real. Mother Nature was the real winner, but I don't. Honestly, it's just freaking ridiculous, man.
If that info got out more and publicized more, oh my God, heads would roll, man. Like I said, as a fan that's already been soaked, the damage is done. I've been there all day already. I'm already wet. Give me the show I paid for.
Exactly, man. Just exactly. Not exactly. It's not a fine moment for NASCAR. I get it was not the easiest decisions, but come on, man. Track record still says that you can be able to extend it, and people would have been fine with that.
Now I'm just mad again.
I'm just going to say this. Christopher Bell wins over Brad Keselowski and William Byron. I'm very disappointed with how it was called early. Kyle Larson didn't even get onto the track. Mother Nature ruined his attempt at the double. Rain delayed the Indy 500. Same rain system followed the Charlotte and in the Cup race before Larson could even step into the Cup car. Toyota had a strong performance. They led over 2/3 of the race. Had 4 of the top 6 finishers with Bell, Reddick, Hamlin, and Gibbs all finishing in the top 6 there. Bell and Gibbs, they led the most laps. Byron led a couple too. Chastain, Truex, Berry, McDowell, SVG, Elliott, and Keselowski all led a small number of laps there too. This race just disappointed me. It makes me angry a little bit.
The hard part, Sean, is you and I talked about it last week. The wife and I were talking about it because this is the first NASCAR race I'd ever taken her to was the Coke 600. With it being such a long event, the daylight night, right around laps 150 to 250 is when things start to get interesting. From 250 to 350, is when we really start to see the picture being painted. From 50 laps in, it's you're hoping someone's holding on, you're hoping pit stops go well. It's all kind of come together. We were just getting to that point. And with Bell leading so many at that point, there was a lot of questions to be asked because Gibbs had already started to fade a little bit, who had started out well in the daylight. We saw Reddick coming through the field, who had to start in the back. So there was we were getting to see things play out, and it was teeing up to be a pretty good show, and we got robbed of it all.
Completely robbed.
Well,
Rain, you ruined this.
Well, not only that, now it's ruined.
You know, it's ruined the vibe so much that Rich's microphone just totally got muted. You know, that totally makes sense there. Crazy. That's how much the rain this past weekend has just affected what could have been one of the best days in motorsports right there. And it all goes down the drain. Gosh darn it all.
Yes, I got excited. I got mad. You're right. It was very frustrating. Things were coming together. And again, shout out to Mark Hogan, because I'm willing to bet narratives and story in NASCAR always. I'm not above to say they called the race because Bell was the winner, and that's the story they wanted. I'm not above saying that. I think that's a full possibility. That's messed up, but I said it. I'll put the tinfoil hat on.
If you want to get my tinfoil hat going, I want to say that Fox just didn't want to broadcast past 1 a.m.
Oh! Bing, bing, bing. I think you nailed something there, bro.
Especially because I think they're still ticked off the fact that they're not getting the Coke 600 next year and losing it to Amazon.
Oh, that's right. They are. That's the first Amazon race.
Yeah. Wouldn't put it past them. Would not.
And you know what? I guarantee you Amazon wouldn't care about it running till 3 a.m. I'll promise you that.
They're like, people pay for our service. We could do what we want.
But, yeah. So, anyway, enough about the Coke 600. I'm glad Kyle stayed at Indy because they ran all 500 miles. So, I don't care what fans think of me and my opinion on the whole double and all that went down. I'm not going to waste any more time. I've gone on Twitter about it to an nth degree. I'll be more than happy to rant some other time. But bottom line for me, I want to see racers race. I'm glad he stayed there and did the 500 miles because we barely got 350 miles in at Charlotte. And it really wasn't a great show because as it started to get good is when they ended it. And we've already discussed ad nauseum here why we think that is. And all we come back to is tinfoil hat theories and BS, which quite frankly is quintessential NASCAR. So I'm ready to move on, Sean. Hit me with whatever you got, bro.
Yeah, I know it's the whole thing about the Kyle Larson double thing has been discussed about online to death. I'm just going to say he should get the waiver. It just brought a lot of attention in NASCAR as it is. Waivers have been giving out for all sorts of circumstances before. They should either revise the waiver rules or they should just get rid of it entirely just because the amount of standards that NASCAR has given for drivers even getting waivers, or heck, you know what? They should have made it a rule where the waivers should be cleared out before the drivers go forth and do these races if they know they're not going to be able to make it or if they're not going to be there right at the start. NASCAR should settle these early. But, you know, I can get onto a whole big tangent about it, but for the sake of time and keeping the show at a decent amount of length, I'm going to save that for another time and just say we should just go to the news stories and talk about some lighter things.
Let's do this. Let's do this, Sean, because you and I are both heated about this. We both feel, I don't know if we're in lockstep, but we're pretty close together on this based on, got waivers for suspensions, etc. Let's save this. Let's come back to this topic when we get the word it's either been approved or not approved. Okay. I think that's worthwhile because we do have a lot of other stuff. And I think at that point, we'll both be calmed down and maybe have more sound mind, and let's have a fair discussion then. So let's flag it for that. We'll probably hear something the next 3 to 4 weeks on that, if not sooner. But yeah, let's move on to the upcoming week.
Yeah, so let's get into our news stories real quick here. Let's just get the big one out of the way here, Rich, because this is the huge big bombshell. We were waiting
We've
for
been
this
waiting.
for a while. It's now official. Stewart-Haas Racing is shutting down after 2024 there, Rich.
Done deal. Driver's been told go find rides. One charter's already been sold. I have heard some very weird things about all of this. Nothing I can really say is factual or true, but I mean, just some hypotheticals that I've heard thrown around, Sean. Stewart and Junior are getting together to do something. Gene Haas plans to still run Xfinity and maybe one car. So maybe not all far charters are for sale, but I don't know that to be true. We heard that someone was going to buy the whole kit and caboodle. Well, that can't happen now because one charter's already been sold, but the talk has been NASCAR is going to limit teams to 3. So are we looking at maybe 3 get bought? The rumors that Trackhouse wants 2. We know that Front Row bought the 1, which is interesting because they already let Michael McDowell go, who, quite frankly, has been the banner driver of the organization. Really, between Penske and Front Row that has this partnership, I could argue McDowell's been the best of the bunch.
Yeah, or even you could even make an argument for Todd Gilliland actually being
fair enough,
considering how hot he's actually been for the price lately. I'll get into more detail about that later, but it can't be ignored about how good Todd Gilliland has actually been in that car lately.
Agreed. I mean, he led laps early, but I mean, I'm at the point where I'm expecting a top 10, top 15 on an off day for McDowell. Like that's where I'm at. Outside of RFK, none of the Fords have really been doing that. So we'll see.
Yeah.
There's, like you and I said before, this is the first big domino to fall. This is going to lead to a whole slew of dominoes to fall. You know, we're probably going to get confirmation on Zane Smith, Michael McDowell. We got to get the charters bought. We're probably going to get, you know, once, let's say Trackhouse does get a charter, we're probably going to get news that Corey Haim's moving up to Cup. So there's going to be a whole slew of information. Doesn't really impact us for betting or DFS purposes, but I will say this. Don't discount these decisions not having an impact on what happens the last handful of races of the year. You may see drivers getting in other rides and things like that. Stranger things have happened, so it's worth watching.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Bob Pockris of Fox Sports, he was tweeting about the Stewart-Haas Racing that they're getting rid of all of their charters. Now, all 4 of their charters are apparently up for sale, and according to him, Front Row has already gotten one.
Right.
Trackhouse is supposed to get 1. 2311 is supposed to get 1, and as for the last one, there's a few different interested teams. But he's been hearing Legacy, RCR, and RFK might be interested in them.
So, interestingly enough, Brad had a tweet out that said, we're $30 million short. People are suggesting we should crowdfund. Kelly Earnhardt came in because everybody's been talking about Junior Motorsports stepping up. She came in. She goes, weird. We're short about $30 million too. So, I'm really curious because I'd thrown out RCR's name before, and the scuttlebutt I was getting back was there's something going on behind the scenes that Dale Jr.'s involved with. I'm not 100% sure that Tony Stewart is completely out, to be honest. I'm not sure that Gene Haas is completely out, to be honest. I know what Legacy wants to do. I don't know where they've got the income. They needed Jimmy Johnson's capital influx, hence the name change, and to get the additional one they got. Granted, they only have 2, so this is going to be very interesting to see play out.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just because also I've been hearing a lot of different driver rumors and discussion about where the Stewart-Haas Racing drivers can go overall. And here's what I've been mainly hearing. Chase Briscoe, the Wood brothers, Josh Berry or Noah Gragson are going to be one of the front row drivers. I think it's leaning more towards Josh Berry to be that driver.
Agreed.
Priest, I think, is not going to have a Cup ride next year.
Nope.
And as for Noah, he's going to be interesting because he's going to probably find a ride elsewhere. I know there's been interest with him from a bunch of different teams, but now I'm starting to hear that apparently that last charter might be bought up by RCR and maybe Gragson will join RCR.
That's where I think it's going. I think Noah's a perfect fit at RCR, and that's what got me thinking RCR might buy that charter. But like I said, the other rumblings I was hearing was like, but that's where I'm with you. I think Gragson goes to RCR. I think that's where he belongs. Quite frankly, I'm glad to see him doing well after how he got treated at Legacy.
And as for the Xfinity drivers, I've been hearing that, of course, Cole Custer's supposed to basically take the 34 seat, with which McDowell is leaving behind to go to Spire next year. And
oh, really?
And as for Riley Herbst, he's either going to probably maintain an Xfinity ride, maybe with one of the Xfinity charters, like from another Ford team that might scoop up one of those Xfinity charters, or he could also potentially land at Rick Ware Racing in the 15 next year, maybe too.
I didn't think Xfinity had charters.
Or at least I think Herbst might be associated with one of the teams that might end up getting a lot of the Ford assets from Stewart-Haas.
That makes sense. Because what I was seeing too was I didn't know that Custer potentially could go back up. As well as he's riding in Xfinity, I'm seeing kind of a Justin Allgaier path for him. Not saying it's at JRM, but one of the top Xfinity teams basically being like, Custer, we want you to be our guy. I like the idea of him moving up to the 34. I'm not sure that it was his driving skill and not the equipment taking a downturn. You know, the more I had hopes for Custer, I had hopes for Briscoe, I had hopes for Priest. The more I see it playing out, the more I wonder how much of it is a lack of quality equipment across 4 teams. And we've seen this when teams have sized down. They can seem to do well with 1 or 2 cars. That 3rd and 4th car is where it gets more complicated. So to see 1 or 2 cars at Stewart-Haas still doing okay, because that's been lost in this discussion. Mm-hmm. There's 2 full-time Stewart-Haas cars in Xfinity. Something's got to happen. And Hurst has been okay, but Custer's in line for a championship run here. This is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I do. There's been a lot of talk about Custer moving back up to join Front Row, especially since Front Row is going to be a Tier 1 Ford team overall there and one of the leading Ford teams. And we know Joe Custer, his father is one of those leading figures at Stewart-Haas Racing. I imagine he probably might have a little bit of influence on maybe one of the charters. Maybe it could be the Front Row charter that's been going. And, from there, Cole could end up finding his way back into the Cup Series that way.
Interesting. We'll have to see.
Indeed. Now, we talked about Front Row here. They basically made it official about acquiring the 3rd charter. They went on record saying, yes, we got it. They didn't say who they got it from on a public note, but we all kind of can just interpret that. That's just one.
Where else did it come from?
The timing is just too coincidental.
I get hiding the cost, but I mean, come on. Where else did it freaking come from? No one else is selling a charter, man.
We pretty much covered this part of the storyline already. We already know. We already have an idea of how it goes. So let's just get into the penalty report from Charlotte real quick. There was no penalties on the Cup side from this past weekend, but we know we have an Xfinity Series penalty with Austin Hill. He got fined $25,000 and docked 25 points for violating Section 4.4b of the NASCAR rulebook, which involves wrecking or spinning another vehicle, whether or not that vehicle is removed from competition as a result, and any actions deemed to compromise the safety of an event or otherwise pose a dangerous risk to the safety of competitors, officials, spectators, or others, as directly lifted from the NASCAR rulebook there.
So let me ask you this, Sean. How come this rule doesn't apply to Kyle Busch?
I'm going to guess maybe because I don't know. Really, I guess you could say there's a number of different circumstances, I guess, just because the actual confrontation between Busch and Stenhouse was just outside of the cars compared to inside the cars. And
he clearly wrecked Stenhouse. He clearly pushed Stenhouse into the wall.
He did. Let's not.
I read
no
this
doubt about that.
I read this: wrecking or spinning another vehicle, whether or not the vehicle is removed from competition as a result. To me, that is black and white. I like Kyle Busch, but that is black and white what he did. So I'm a little confused here. I thought Custer did it under yellow, which is why I said this is why. Well, I went back and looked. There were no flashing yellow lights when he did it.
No,
So,
Austin got him on Custer under green here. So, yeah, and I know they usually make the fines a little lower because Xfinity is a lower series compared to Cup, but still, I mean, Austin Hill basically even admitted pretty much that, oh yeah, he was mad. He wanted to just spin Cole out, pretty much.
which Kyle did too. Kyle straight up said, yeah, I wrecked you. Like, this is where NASCAR is its own worst enemy and why fans get so frustrated and feel like they pick winners and losers and they rig races and everything else. Because clearly, like, I am going to copy this and put it on Twitter, and I'm going to be like, someone explain to me how this rule doesn't apply to Kyle Busch. I like Kyle Busch, but I want to know why this rule doesn't apply.
NASCAR, they have their own set of rules. They make their own decisions at this point. I'm just following along and just.
Where can I get a copy of the rule book, by the way?
The rule book, I think you can actually find a lot of the rules posted online. I think they've made some posts in the past on NASCAR.com about it.
I'll go look for that because I know I can get an NFL rule book. I have yet to figure out a way to get a NASCAR rule book.
So, speaking of penalties, though, that the Austin Hill penalty was the only Xfinity Series penalty there, but we did have a pair of Truck Series penalties for lug nuts outside of Corey Heim. The number 5 Tricon Race Garage Toyota crew chief there, Derek Smith, and the number 38 Front Row Motorsports crew chief, Dylan Capello. These are the crew chiefs for Dean Thompson and Lane Riggs. They both got fined $2,500 for one loose lug nut found after the race there, Rich.
Yeah, whatever.
Kind of nothing penalties, really.
I'm over lug nuts anyway, man. They said the center lug was going to fix all that. We've had more lug nut problems with the one center lug than any of these low-level teams that don't have the equipment and the know-how in getting loose lugs. So, we never used to have penalties for it. I'm okay to go back and get away from it. I get Himes was a dangerous situation. I'm all fair game to penalize, but NASCAR, you got enough bigger issues to fry. I'm not worried about one lug nut out of 5.
Well, lug nuts. They're there. We're dealing with it. Let's just move on. We got ourselves some new drivers making some driver announcements here. We got Parker Retzlaff. He's going to make his Cup Series debut at Daytona with Beard Motorsports in the number 62 Chevrolet there, Rich. Quick reaction to this.
Cool. I'd rather see Parker get some more consistent rides in some lower level series in top equipment because I feel like he does have the skill set. He is fun to watch. We haven't really seen him in good equipment. We're not really going to see good equipment either, but as we've said, at Daytona, anything is possible. So cool. I'm more excited about the next news, to be honest with you.
Let's just get right into it. Clint Bowyer's back racing. He's going to drive the number 7 Spire Motorsports truck at Nashville right there. That's pretty exciting, actually.
I think it's very exciting. One, I love Nashville. I know Junior hates concrete tracks. I love concrete tracks from a fan. It sounds like it's terrible to drive, but from a fan standpoint, we get more tire wear. We get more slipping and sliding. I've always found the concrete tracks as a general rule to be more fun to watch. So I love it. And it's been a while since we've seen Clint behind the wheel. And you've heard me say this, Sean. I would love the Truck Series to go back to youth, old farts. Like, I miss when the Truck Series was mostly short tracks and with the old has-beens, never-weres, and the young guys coming up. And Clint falls in that. We haven't seen him in a truck. He seems excited, and he's going to get in good equipment. So we're going to get to see, Junior's been in good equipment when he's come out of the booth and raced. Now we get to see it from Clint Bowyer. I'm looking forward to it. And look, there's a reason he drove Cup, and now this guy gets to drive some truck stuff. Let's see what all Clint's got behind the ears these days, man.
And it's exciting he's doing it with Spire there, too. That's an actually competitive truck that could win.
It's good equipment, man.
We saw Kyle Busch win in that number 7 truck twice this year.
They just had what, a top 5 finish with or top 10 finish with
8th place with Connor Mosak this past weekend.
That's right. I was to say 8th place with Mosak. So, I mean, it's top equipment. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. Always nice to see somebody come back and just have a little fun in some of these lower series. So, next up, we have Haley Deegan. She's getting a new crew chief starting this week. Matt Lucas is in as Joe Williams parts ways with AM Racing. Quick thoughts here, Rich.
I don't care. Whatever. I don't know that he was necessarily the problem. I'm not going to sit here and dog her. Whatever.
Okay, I don't really have much thought on this either, to be honest with you.
Sorry, man.
I'm just covering this just because it's something that affects the race this weekend. So
it does, but I mean, let's be honest. When she has a top 10, top 15 run, people are excited. I grew up watching her dad. I would love to see her do well. I'm just not seeing it. And while she gets a bad rep for wrecking all the time, it's not always her fault. It's not like she's out there wrecking people. But there's more hype than there is talent, and I hope it works out.
Well, we shall see. That AM Racing team, they've just been in between around the top 15, top 20 to just not having good runs. So
right.
It's been all over the place there. But You know what? Enough about things that we don't care about. Let's talk about something we do care about by talking about our favorite paint schemes of the week there, Richie. You like that segue?
Yeah, I did like that segue.
Fun stuff here. So let's get into it. How about you start us off there this week, Rich? What do you got for us?
Well, and just for the record's sake, I don't disagree with any of Sean's picks. All of Sean's picks were like I said, we never look at each other's, but when I came back, I was like, well, we have a lot of overlap this week. But I'll throw one out there where we don't, and that's Austin Dillon. It's a little busy as a general rule, but there is something about this car that I just think looks cool. I don't know if it's the water. I don't know if it's the way the 3 pops with the green and the blue. But it just, especially the side view that you see on the NASCAR page, it just looks sexy. I think it looks cool.
Yeah, it's not a bad-looking car. I definitely like the little river water effects that they're kind of going with there with the Ducks Unlimited Rivers Are Life partnership there on that 3 car. It's a very interesting paint scheme. It kind of reminds me, I want to say there was that one paint scheme with Ross Chastain earlier in the year.
Agreed.
With the, I want to say, what sponsor was that again?
It was the bush with the fish.
Right, yeah. It reminds me of that paint scheme. I still like the Chastain paint scheme a little bit better than this one, but this one's not bad too. I can dig it there.
It very much reminded me of that. Honestly, what ruins this paint scheme is the Dow red diamond on the side, which I know is the main sponsor, but that's where I think the Ross Chastain, they had the fish there instead. So I think they get the nod as far as a head-to-head deal, but no, like I said, it's a little busy, but I thought they did a good job. It really looks cool. I'd be curious to see what it looks like on the track.
Yeah, it should be real interesting to see. The hood's also a little bit busy with the logos too, for my liking, but overall, not bad. Not a bad choice, I say it. So let's talk about your next one here, Rich. What was your other choice?
I like the William Byron Valvoline scheme, man.
Yes.
I don't know if it's just got like this Mark Martin motif feel to it. I don't know what exactly it is, but I just think it looks good, man.
I have to agree with you. The grayish, the gray color, along with the 24 number and how the red and blue mix on the side skirts, and just the way that they make use of the sponsor space is very, very good on this car. This was very close to being one of my picks as well as it is. So I just put this down under both of us. It's a very clean looking car. The only reason why I think I may not have picked it as much is because I like the other 2 schemes I picked a little bit better. And also, while this is a great looking paint scheme, I thought that this wasn't as good as the Valvoline scheme that Kyle Larson ran earlier in the year too. That one was really, really good.
I would agree with that statement. If this was my design, there's a couple of things I would have done. I would have taken that red around the headlight and had a ribbon that went back and connected with that red on the bottom. And I do the blue on the other side. I do something like that. I always liked that ribbon look that the Valvoline paint scheme used to have. Look, part of it was my top one was one you had already picked. So, I mean, I had to give the hat tip to you on that, man. You were there first.
Well, either that or I was surprised you didn't pick the Derek Kraus paint scheme because it was orange this week.
I knew that. I was like, Sean's going to think I'm going there. I said, and I get why, but no, this one I really liked, man. And some of it's because the number is a very specific color that the team was broadcasting on Twitter.
Yeah. So I'm going to just go forth and mention my first of my picks here then. It's Justin Haley's Moto Rats paint scheme there. The number
Dude, that's
50...
a fire scheme, man.
Oh, my gosh. Best paint scheme of the week right here.
I don't disagree, dude. The sponsor's great, too, Motor Rad. Like, I can't lie, man. I had this one flagged, too, and I was like, I'll let you have this one solo because it looks fast, Sean. To steal your thunder, it looks fast.
Stealing my thunder on the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, Rich? I see what you did there. But yeah, it's a really fast-looking paint scheme there. The red, the white. Oh, man, just the design there. It just looks like it looks like lightning. It looks like it could fly. The way that the stripes are being used, the black number, great contrast usage right there. I love how this one looks, and I gotta tell you, this might be a slight spoiler for later, but I have a lot of love for Justin Haley this week, and this paint scheme contributes to that there, Rich.
Paint scheme didn't contribute to it, but I'm sharing your love for Haley, so you don't have to talk me into it.
So, on that note, let's get into the other paint scheme that I chose this week, and that's Brad Keselowski's Solomon Plumbing paint scheme. It's not the first time that he's ran the paint scheme this season, as he's also run it at Las Vegas earlier in the year, but it's still a very nice, clean paint scheme. You don't see too many white and green paint schemes. I think this has good usage of the sponsor space. The way that the colors are used in contrast are very nice. You got the chrome number 6 there. Looks very great there, Rich.
So on Twitter, do you know what they were calling that number 6? Because the video they showed these pictures don't do it justice. They were calling that number 6 orange chrome.
Oh, there you go. Love that.
So, considering green and orange are my thing, Brad, white and green paint scheme and orange chrome number, I was sold, bro. Sold on it. And it looks fast.
For sure. I mean, I really do like how it looks. It looks clean. It looks fast. What more do you need?
Nothing. And I also agree with your shout out. I don't know if you've got the photo for it, but I do agree with your shout out.
The other paint scheme I'm going to shout out real quick is John Hunter Nemechek's Bon Marito paint scheme this week. That number 42 car. If I was able to pick 4 cars there, this was my number 4 choice right here, just behind the Byron paint scheme overall.
And as much as I give Legacy flack, their paint schemes have been pretty good because the 43 looks good this week also.
Yeah, the Family Dollar paint scheme. We even featured that early on in the Thunder Hour as one of our first paint schemes to mention there when John Hunter Nemechek ran that. So,
yep.
And I also want to mention this too. You always say there might be something to the paint scheme theory. Well, last week, 2 of the paint schemes we ended up picking ended up finishing first and second.
Why am I not shocked, man? Like, we've got all these sheets saved, right? Or we can go back and look at the paint schemes. Neither of us have time right now with football on the way, but we really should go back because I'm really curious. Because let's be fair, we only pick anywhere from 4 to 6 paint schemes each week, right? Maybe a 7th here and there, but for the most part, it's only 4 to 5 paint schemes. And to think of how many times they've been either winners or just close to it, like, just weird.
I mentioned both Brad Kay and Christopher Bell's paint schemes last week, and Bell's was the shout-out one. So,
Yeah, I would say we both loved Bells. We thought it was great. So I don't get it, man. But whatever.
It's just crazy how this keeps happening, man. I think we might be on to something. But you know what, though? Speaking of getting onto business, though, let's actually get into this week's race here. Let's talk about the split weekend between Worldwide Technology Raceway / Gateway and Portland. There, the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, they're going to 2 different tracks overall this week, Rich. Let's set the stage here.
All right, so Xfinity's going road racing to Portland. We've been at Portland the last few years. Turn 1 is insane. They've changed restart zones last year to try to nullify some of that. It helped to some degree, but as we saw at the end of last year's race, being in the lead with 2 laps to go did not benefit you, as coming out of that corner, out of the straightaway into that corner, put you in harm's way. I fully expect the same. You'll have a wonderful write-up on that. I'll be honest, it's not my favorite track we go to. It is nothing but chaos and ridiculousness in turn 1, and it gets kind of old in my every restart. Every restart, it's like, oh God, who's gonna miss it? Because they have that stop and go area or the drive-through, and didn't we have a whole issue last year where someone went through the drive-through and then they didn't stop all the way or something, and so they ended up being penalized, and someone else did stop, and actually it still benefited them because they got all wrecked up in the corner, and so then they decided they wanted to do a pass-through or something. Turn 1 at Portland is a disaster. I don't know another way to put it.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy over at Portland with that first turn. It's not a large turn, and you have multiple drivers that are just going to be going and gunning for it, especially some of these younger drivers that they're on that whole winning is everything mentality, go win or go home. It gets really crazy at Portland, especially if it's late. You get restarts there, you can expect just a mess to happen.
Yep, we went to overtime last year. I think went to overtime the year before. I'd have to double check that, but I know for sure we did last year. Look, St. Louis Gateway, it's technically in Illinois. It's right across the river. If you're going into St. Louis, you go right by it before you even get to the arch. I know it is Gateway. I've been writing it up as Worldwide Technology because that's what it's called. It's at Gateway Motorsports Park. You'll hear it called different things. We're just outside St. Louis. This is a very unique track. I'm hoping they did something for the spotter stand because I don't want to hear all the spotter stand talk like we did last year. Sean and I were talking before the show, and I wrote this in the article. It's an intermediate track. It's 1.25 miles. It doesn't really race like an intermediate track, though. It's very flat in the corners, and it's not symmetrical. You look at a downward map of it, you can see it's not symmetrical, but it doesn't, at first glance, it doesn't appear that way. Look, like I told Sean, last year's average speed, which we had 11 cautions, that's a fair amount, 81 miles an hour. To give you an idea, this week at Charlotte, we were at like 117 or 120. Pole speed, I think last year was like 138. For an intermediate or bigger track, it's fairly slow, and that's because the corners are so flat and so tight. This is where we saw Kosin Hocevar get into it in the Truck Series last year. I think that may have been when he broke his foot, too, 2 years ago. There's going to be some bumping and banging, Sean. And there is no other track we go to pull data from. We've only raced at this track at the Cup level twice. The only series that's been here regularly is the Truck Series. Again, I loved how the Truck Series went to these different unique places. This race can sometimes drag on, but there's not a lot of shade. So if we have a sunny day, expect a hot, slick track. And I expect some beating and banging.
Oh, yeah. I do agree with you on that. This is the sort of track that, at least for the trucks, you're going to see some of that sort of action. For Cup, you might see a little bit of that too, but that depends on exactly how the car drivers and teams tune their cars. If any sorts of drivers can be able to make their way to the front. They're using the intermediate rules package this week for a track that is under 1.5 miles here. So you don't see that too often, but you can think of tracks like Bristol that do have that as a marker overall to consider too, as far as how to gauge some of the speed levels that these drivers can display there, Rich.
Yep. And like I said, last year's Cup race was a bit slower, and I'm kind of expecting the same. I don't know how much passing we're going to get, especially with the shifting. There's definitely going to be a lot of shifting because you got the straightaways, and you're going to slow down a lot for these flat, tight corners. So it's going to be interesting. We've only had a handful of lap leaders each of the races we've run there at the Cup side. Last year, I think there was a total of 5. Only 3 led 30 or more. 2 of the drivers basically led 3/4 of the race. So dominators, lap leaders, starting near the front, that's all going to be crucial.
Yeah, especially you look back towards last year's race. The winner was Kyle Busch. He started on the pole there. He led the most laps, 121. He also won the first stage in last year's event. You had Denny Hamlin finishing second. He started from the 3rd position. Joey Logano finished 3rd. He started from the 6th position. In fact, actually, you look back towards the whole top 10, only 3 drivers had a starting position outside of the top 10 right there in last year's race at Gateway. So
Kyle Larson was one of them.
Yeah.
And honestly, the second most laps led was by Ryan Blaney, who started 2nd and finished 6th.
Yeah, it's just an interesting contrast, though, compared to the first race at Worldwide Technology there in 2022, when really it was only about half the drivers there that finished in the top 10 even started there. So it's very interesting when you notice the different trends here, that starting position is going to really matter. We have to pay attention to qualifying this week.
Which, look, at the 2nd and 3rd year with this car, Sean, we're seeing that at almost all the tracks. I wrote in the article this week that I've come to the conclusion, as much as we love practice time and consecutive laps, I'm starting to put more weight into qualifying, because it certainly seems like these drivers that start near the front lead laps and stay near the front. We are not seeing a lot of drivers coming from the back of the field and moving up a bunch of spots. We're getting 2 or 3 a week at most, it seems like. It's our typical drivers, the Tyler Reddicks, the Kyle Larsons, good equipment sitting in the back, that sort of thing. I mean, even Joey Logano struggled moving up this week in Charlotte. He thought he was doing a good job. He thought the car was coming around. The first year at the track, I kind of throw things out because there's a lot of unknowns. Everybody's got a set of notes the second time we come back, right? And yep. I think we're going to see a lot of what we saw last year, and I'm with you, Sean. I think we got to be real careful and pay close attention to who's starting near the front and focus on those guys. Even the mid, I don't care if it's, like Mark had pointed out, some of these mid-tier price drivers people don't want because they feel like, or lower price drivers because they feel like they might go backwards. Going backwards 5 spots isn't a big deal when you start 15.
But we also have to keep in mind that pit strategy could also go into big effect this weekend. We saw it last year, particularly with Michael McDowell staying out several times in last year's race for track position. He still ended up finishing 9th, even while racing with older tires at a couple of different points there, Rich.
Track position is king. That's what it's come down to. That's why qualifying is starting to be a little more important to me. Everyone has figured out how to do the aero block. We saw it in the Truck Series with Nick Sanchez and Corey Heim. Heim talked about it. They poke a bigger hole in the air than these Cup cars do. We've heard multiple Cup drivers talk about this. We've seen it with pit calls and pit strategies. Track position is king, and it's going to be this week.
Definitely, especially when you consider that this is the sort of track where you're not going to get as much passing lanes as some of the other tracks overall, too. You're going to see drivers just move towards the bottom of the track, try to hold their line there, and anybody that tries to top, well, that's the real long way around the track. You don't get as much of an advantage of it as compared to, say, some other tracks, right?
Yep, I would agree.
Yeah. So really, if you're playing DFS, you're going to want to make sure you hit on those dominators. You want to make sure not to be afraid of picking drivers that start, say, around the 15th or so, even if they're lower priced, if they have promising enough equipment or practice speeds in order to stay there. I think this is a thing that we have to really just keep in mind and consider, that even if you're playing a GPP, you're going to want to make sure you have those drivers that just get the solid finish, because the finishing position sometimes outweighs the potential place differential. Some of those drivers that are even further back that, if they get the place differential, they're going to score, but they might not outscore somebody that's, say, finishes 15th while not losing place differential compared to somebody that starts around, like, say, 33rd and then finishes 25th.
No, I'm in complete agreement. And I'll be honest, Sean, we're going to have to be laser focused if we're chasing place differential points, because there's only a handful. You hitting on them have been big because they have moved up, say, from 17th to 6th or 22nd to 8th or something like that. But there's only been a couple. We're going to have to hit on them. You know, it used to be easy to chase those place differential points. Now I'm chasing raw speed and qualifying position, because it's become very clear to me, especially over the last month, track position, and you're right. We can't predict pit strategy. What we can do is note which teams tend to gamble more, which teams tend to hit on some interesting strategies, and which teams are the ones that we know are going to take a shot to do those things, right? It's common you see the same ones taking 2 tires or staying out. And I tell you what, the way the tires have been, staying out has been a big, big plan that's worked. I mean, that's a horrible way to say it. I get tongue twisted here, but we saw it. Look, Heim couldn't get Sanchez. Sanchez had that track position. That was what set the stage for that finish. We had the exact same thing in the Cup race. We had the exact same thing in the Cup race the week before. So, and you know what sucks? For live betting, it kills everything, because now it doesn't pay to find that guy in 6th, 7th, 8th that Vegas is kind of frowning on. Bell, by the time I put in the chat there, these are the cars I like: Bell, Wallace, Keselowski, and I can't remember the 4th one. Sean, they were all 4 in the top 5 by the time the race got called. But guess what? I posted it around lap 200 when I said I was planning on doing it. It was right around there. Race was called at lap 250. When I made that post, they weren't 4 of the top 5. They were all in the top 10, but track position was king. And the ones that had a little bit of speed, they only had to pass a couple of cars.
Exactly. And for those that are actually just trying to figure out the rostership percentages, you want to lean a little more towards these drivers that start towards the front a little bit, especially if the circumstances point to the fact that they're going to at least stay there. Agreed.
And we're going to have to start getting creative, trying to chase some of the ownership or fading some of the, we've always been go chalk, 1 or 2 contrarian really kind of keeps you in the money no matter what, because if they crash, you got the chalk and you're in, unlike NFL, you're at 40-50% ownership. It's not going to kill you. We're going to have to start getting a little creative and seeing if we can find some of those dominators that are a little lower owned. Otherwise, we're going to have to hit the 3 chalky plays on the dominators, and we are going to have to get creative looking elsewhere. And it's not going to be chasing the PD points, because that's where the chalk is, and we need to find something else.
Exactly. That's why we need to just focus on the drivers that'll get the solid finishing positions overall, especially in DPP.
Yep, I'm with you. Well, should we're probably getting strapped on time here, Sean. So do we want to rattle through some of the special starts this week and get into our picks?
Yeah, let's just quickly go through it here. Trucks, which you're covering, you have Colby Howard in the 1 for Tricon Garage, Andres Perez in the 7 for Spire, Keith McGee in the 22, Connor Mosek in the 45 for Nice, Luke Fenhouse making his first start of the year in the 66 for ThorSport, and you have Vicente Salas in the number 91 for McAnally Hilgerman Racing there, Rich. What's on your radar this week?
Colby Howard. Perez to some degree, because it's a road course. I really wish Kobe was getting this start in an oval, but
this is an oval this week. Trucks are going to Gateway.
My bad. See, when we go to 2 tracks, man, I'm getting so yes. I'm less interested in Perez because we're on an oval. I'm more interested in Howard because we're on an oval in the 1 car. Let's see what they got. That 1 car's kind of been all over. Brett Moffitt kind of let us down last race. I'm really curious to see Colby Howard. Connor Mosek in the 45. We just talked about the 45 truck. And hat tip for you, because I could not find who was in the number 91. I looked.
Yeah, Vicente Salas, NASCAR.com basically confirmed that, he is making his 2nd Truck Series start of the year, this time with McAnally Hilgerman Racing. Totally different team from his first start there.
That's a better team. It's a good team to be making the start with. So let's see what they got.
Yep. In the Xfinity Series, which is the largest list of the different unique part-timers, Garrett Smithley in the 4, not really looking to see too much there, but maybe except for potential value depending on qualifying. Patrick Gallagher in the 6, that's an interesting one right there, too, especially for value picks in Xfinity. Logan Bearden in the 07 for SS Greenlight. Not sure what to think of that one yet. You have Andre Castro in the 14, another SS Greenlight car. Could be interesting. Want to see more with that. This is the one that interests me right here. We have the 2 Joe Gibbs Racing entries, the 19 and the 20. Josh Bilicki in the 19, Ryan Truex in the 20. Both of these drivers, I think, are going to be really competitive this weekend, Rich.
I'm really curious about Bilecki. Ryan Truex, look, we know he's competitive. He's not necessarily a road racer. Neither is his brother Martin, but they both perform decently. Bilecki does have some road racing background. He's never really been in good equipment. I'm very curious about that. Quite frankly, though, I'm interested in the next 2 names you got as well.
Yeah, Ed Jones in the 24, and Sage Karam is back in the 26, both for Sam Hunt Racing. So we know Sage Karam, he on these road courses, he's one that we always have to watch for just because he outperforms that equipment, usually gets good runs out of it. I still remember it was like last year he almost got a road course win.
He did. He and Mayer. That was and Karam and Noah got into it the year before on a road race.
I want to say it was actually at this exact track where him and Noah
I think
got
it was
into
Elkhart. I think both of them were at Elkhart Lake. I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah, it's Road America here. Actually, yeah, you may be right. It might be Road America.
I thought it was Road America, but Ed Jones has got a road racing background too, so that's why I'm kind of interested, because to your point, we're usually not big on Sam Hunt equipment, but we've had examples of Karam in that equipment contending for a win.
Yeah, exactly. We have Austin Green in another entry for Jordan Anderson Racing. That could be one to watch for the price right there. Frankie Muniz is back in the 35 car. Preston Pardus in the 36 and a DGM Racing entry. And you have Nathan Bird in the number 92. DGM is bringing 3 cars this week. I have my eye on Pardus if he makes the race, because he's had some respectable results for the equipment with DGM before. But other than that, what we've talked about, that's all I'm going to say for Xfinity right there, Rich.
No, I'm with you. I think we're in lockstep for the most part. I'll be looking forward to your article. Like I said, that middle group of 4 there are the ones that really caught my eye. I'm curious to see where you lean, once everything settles with practice and qualifying for the value picks. For Cup, it's pretty cut and dry, right? We got Cody Ware in the 15, which at some point I'm guessing we're going to see Cody Ware in the car more for Rick Ware. I don't know. Derek Kraus is getting another start in the 16. We haven't seen much from Colleague. If the Cup guys weren't if the Xfinity wasn't at Portland, we'd probably see SVG in that car. But because they are in Portland, there's no sense in trying to have anyone do double duty. That's just silly.
Yeah, their drivers are split between 2 different venues right there. So there you go.
Well,
all right.
If you're interested in all this content, we keep talking about our articles, please go to fantasyguru.com. For $39.99, you still get all of our content for the next year, plus NHL, plus NBA, plus PGA, plus MMA, and more. That's the steep, $40, less than $4 a month, right, to get everything and keep up to date. We've won your money back. You can ask OG. You can ask Mark. We're not blowing smoke. We've been hitting. We've got it documented. We're keeping track of it in the Discord. No, we're not 100%, but I tell you what, when you look around at the bets we hit on and others that don't, we're there. And hey, if you want more, because I recommend getting more, click on the little subscribe button, click on any of the packages. There are great promos out there. And if you ask nicely and hit me up on X, I'll share one of the discount codes that are out there all over the place. But I'm not going to post them here because I don't want to get them wrong. I'll double check if you hit me up on Twitter or Discord or something like that. But fantasyguru.com, part of the Elite Plus network. Tune in. Please click like or subscribe on our YouTube page. Give a little love to me and Sean. But please, we stand by all the staff we have here at Fantasy Guru, with Jeff Mance leading the ship. And we've got, wonderful folks like Ray Flowers, Justin Fencerman, Armando Marsal. Man, Russ and Tyler. There's so many names. The bearded one, and Mark and Sean. I mean, it goes Chris Rose. It goes on for days. Patio Joe. I stand by all our content and all our people. So please check us out, fantasyguru.com.
Yes.
Sean, we got a lot of overlap on all of our tiers. I don't know how you want to run through it. You can feel free to run through it and cover me. There is very little difference between our list of drivers this week across all the tiers.
All right. Yeah, we do have a few drivers that I think we are both in similar mindset that we like this week. I'm going with the top price drivers here. I got Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr., and William Byron. Larson's been very good on a lot of the 1 mile tracks there that even you are like Phoenix, New Hampshire-ish type tracks. Truex has been very consistent on these sorts of tracks as well. And then William Byron, that 24 team, they're going to be looking pretty good no matter what track type it is. Although I do think they have lost their luster a little bit compared to the beginning of the year. They're the sort of team that I think can easily find themselves into the top 10. And for the price point, that's what I like to see.
The 24 team bounced back a little bit this week at Charlotte for me. I'm with you. They seem to have lost some of their luster. You and I talked about it earlier. They seem to just get the finishes when they need them, whether it was strategy, whether it was speed. We saw that again at Charlotte. I feel like they're kind of going in the back direction or back in the right direction. I'm okay with Larson. I don't know why I can't warm up to Larson. I'm a Larson guy. I just feel like after everything he went through this last weekend, I'm expecting a little bit of a dud from Larson, especially since Vegas is all in on him. I kind of like to zig when they zag. I'm actually looking at Sean and I overlap, except I'm on Ryan Blaney over Kyle Larson. He's on Larson. I don't disagree with the Larson thing. I am kind of hung up on Ryan Blaney and Kyle Busch being the only two drivers with 2 top 5 finishes here. I think that does matter a little bit, especially at a track we've only been to a couple of times. Blaney felt like he had better speed this week. They got involved in a wreck. But the way he spoke about the team in the car during the interview caught my eye. We know Ford, as Sean has pointed out, has brought the other motors. So that's why I'm kind of looking at Blaney. I don't disagree with Larson, though.
My whole thing about Blaney is that I think the price point is way too high for me on DraftKings in order for me to make him one of my main usages this week. If it was FanDuel, I'd say, on the other hand, use them all you like there because the price point is a lot friendlier for Blaney on FanDuel compared to DraftKings. Because on DraftKings, he is priced as the 3rd most expensive driver, whereas on FanDuel, you have to go, he's about the 8th most expensive at $10,500 there. Way more affordable as it is. Definitely like him for FanDuel lineups in particular. Whereas on DraftKings, I don't know about that for that price. That price is a little bit too high for me.
But he's cheaper than Larson.
Yeah, but if you're going to, for me to use Blaney at that price point, you want a driver to just dominate and win. And I think Blaney, although he's been good, I just don't know if I could see it until I see a little bit more data first for me to feel
that's fair. Like I said, I'm hung up on the 2 top 5s, the leading the laps. And I'm more worried about a letdown after everything that went on this weekend with Kyle. You know, I know for me, when I swam after a real big meet, after all that, bouncing back that following week was a lot tougher. Like it's hard to describe. So that's kind of where I'm at. The reason I brought up the price point is I was looking at both and he was a little cheaper and I have concerns on both. That's kind of where it's at. The one I really like though, especially at the price point, is Byron, but I also like Truex. And yes, you mentioned Truex there, you know.
I much prefer Truex, especially considering his consistency on a lot of these sorts of tracks is just something I favor more there. Now, if I want that sort of Penske performance there that can be pretty close, I would rather look at Logano, who's at 9,300 on DraftKings compared to Blaney. Well, and yeah, 9,000 on FanDuel. I mean, for FanDuel, I'd say I'd probably lean Blaney a little bit more there compared to DraftKings, but the price difference is so vast between the two on DK that I would just say Logano's the better bet for me to just have that cap flexibility.
I'm in total agreement. I mean, I don't want to be a spoiler here, but if you go down to our 4, Logano's in it and Blaney isn't. So I'm with you. I'm in total agreement. I'd rather save the $1,000 and go with Logano, $1,500 even, than I would Blaney. But, we were looking at top price guys. So I went, the highest price 5-6 guys and kind of narrowed it down. And like I said, I'm hung up on, I'm expecting Larson to kind of need a breath. I very well could be wrong on that, Sean, but that's where my thought process was.
Well, he never even got the chance to run the Cup car too. So I imagine he's probably a little fired up, if anything.
I think it's a mental disappointment thing because he didn't even get in the car. He hung out all day at the track in Indy, did the 500 miles. Adrenaline's going. He's rushing to get to the track. He gets to the track, and now he has to sit and wait, and then only to find out nothing. I actually feel like he'd been better off getting in the car and driving some laps than the fact that he didn't. And again, I could be very well wrong on all this, Sean, but I'm just sharing where my thought process is.
That's valid. It could go either way as it is, but I'm just thinking that Larson, he's the sort of driver that wants to win every time. He gets in
All
the
the
car,
time.
he expects to win.
Yes.
So I imagine, especially considering that out of the Hendrick cars last year, he was the best driver at this track. So
by far, he was the only one. He was the only one that came from the back. He's the only one that worked his way through the field. So I get the plus 500 odds as the favorite. I get your angle on it. And look, come Sunday, Sean, I may be on the Kyle Larson train. Once I see an interview, once I see practice, like I said, sometimes I just follow some of these weird gut shots and gut instincts. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, and I'm just having a hard time. And maybe it's because of my fandom. Maybe I feel bad for Larson, and I'm having a hard time with this now because I feel like he got shafted. I don't know. And I do get hung up on. I'm still hung up. We've only been here twice, and there's only like 4 drivers that have consistently done well here in both races. So that does ring true to me. And Truex, hey, look,
Logano being one of them.
Logano, Truex, Blaney, Kyle Busch are those 4 drivers. So take that for what it's worth.
Well, for what it's worth, we got to also find some drivers that are a little further down the price ladder. So let's just get into our mid-tier picks here, Rich. So you have, well, actually, we overlap on 2 of the choices here. So I'll just go ahead and name them there. Ross Chastain and Chris Buescher there, 8,200 and 8,500 respectively on DraftKings there, Rich.
Ross is just way underpriced, man. Buescher,
it is ridiculous.
But Buescher's maybe overpriced, but the way RFK has been running, I really wanted to look at Brad, but Brad being north of 9,000 and Buescher being at 8,500, and Buescher's had, he's not been like amazeballs, but neither has Brad here. They both have run well lately, and I think this is a kind of track for Buescher, right? Take care of the equipment, don't overdrive the car. So, but Ross is so underpriced, Sean. 8,200? What are they doing?
Yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous how both the DFS sites and the betting sports books have just been treating Ross's odds, considering these sorts of tracks are where Ross has been really shining at. Absolutely crazy right there.
I agree. The only difference we really had there was you're on Noah Gragson and Josh Berry, who are cheap. They're like 73, 7,500 or 74, 7,500, something like that. I'm on Bubba Wallace, man. I just feel like he's been consistently a top 5, top 10 speed. He had an okay finish here at Charlotte. He was actually in a decent spot. They're finally starting to get the finishes that match up with the speed the last 2-3 weeks. At $7,800, I think he's way underpriced. So I'm having a hard time not using where I think a top 10 is completely plausible, man.
My only thing with Bubba is more so 2311 on this particular track. They just have not been having the results overall there, too. Neither Tyler Reddick or Bubba Wallace have never scored a top 10 finish in a Cup car at this track. So I do think that if the equipment is there, there is potential, but it's not something that's one of my first choices right there overall. I kind of prefer the Stewart-Haas angle with Noah Gragson or Josh Berry, just because SHR, they've been a little bit better overall, I would say, this year on these sorts of tracks there. Although Reddick's been good, I do think the price line for Reddick is a little bit higher than what I would be like.
Yep.
I think that
Well,
the Gregson Barry angle too. Gregson, he finished 12th at the 2 races at the 1 mile track so far this year of Dover and Phoenix. And we have to remember that Dover also used the same rules package as well.
Yeah, but Dover's a high banked Bristol. I mean, concrete, high banks. It's a far different animal, in my opinion. I will say this. You're right about 2311. However, I do think they're sharing information with Joe Gibbs, and Joe Gibbs has had good cars that have run well here. Since it's now race number 3, I feel like race number 1 was a lot more learning for everybody involved. Race number 2 was we have some notes, let's apply what we know. Race number 3 is, okay, we know what works, we know what doesn't work to some degree. I feel like 23, because I was the same way on Reddick. I really wanted to look at Reddick, but he's priced so high. Bubba, on the other hand, I consider 2311 much more of an extension of JGR. He's the cheapest JGR 2311 Toyota available. So that's kind of where my thought process is. But I'm in agreement. Bubba hasn't really shown it here. What's interesting to me, though, is the Truck Series did race a lot here. Bubba ran quite a few Truck Series or seasons, and the trucks have run here more than just about anywhere else compared to relative to what we run with the Xfinity and Cup. Xfinity and Cup don't have really anything here, where the trucks outside of a 4-year window has been a staple on the circuit since 1997.
That's also true, too. I mean, I'm not going to discount Bubba entirely this week, but he just hasn't shown enough that I'm not instantly jumping right at it until I see a little bit more.
That's fair. Well, let's talk about our sleepers, because shocker, we overlap again.
Yeah, we overlap a lot here, particularly with 2 of the 3 drivers. Once again, we get 2 out of 3 matching. We're both on Carson Hocevar, and like I mentioned earlier in the show, I love Justin Haley this week here, and you do
I'm
too.
all in, bro. Haley train. The one where we differ is Todd Gilliland. You can explain why, but I get why on Todd Gilliland, and I'm right there with you. I could probably be talked into it over the one I picked. The one I picked was 2 reasons. Cheap. And he ran a bunch of truck races here. That'd be Zane Smith. $5,400 because he's run, trucks fairly recently here, even, just a couple years ago and last year. I kind of like the fact that he's got a little bit of experience. If he qualifies far enough back, it's going to be hard for me to not use him.
That's also true, too, but we also can't forget that Todd Gilliland also has a little bit of truck experience at this track as well, too.
Yes, he does. Because, again, the Truck Series has raced here every year except from 2010 to 2014, I think was the off period. I'm almost positive on that. So from 1997
to 2014.
2014, yeah. So from 97 till now, outside of those 4 years, the trucks have been there. And Todd Gilliland did a lot of truck for the same team Zane Smith did, no less.
Yeah, exactly. But I do really, really like Todd Gilliland. I think he's a very sneaky play. He finished 22nd in 2022 at this track. He did not lose place differential because that's exactly where he started. But it's last year's race that also has my eye on him too, because he started 28th, even worse than the year before. He ended up finishing 15th. And front row, They have something figured out about this place where they can be able to sneak out some decent finishes. Both Gilliland and Michael McDowell are drivers that I think are ones that we could watch, because this could be a good track for front row. And they got that alliance with Team Penske, who, as you know, they've done quite well at this place as well. So,
oh yeah, we've already talked about Blaney and Logano and the whole deal. Even us, the Cindrics, had a couple of decent finishes here. So,
I'm also going to say this about Todd Gilliland, too. The other reason why I'm really liking him over the others is just because of the fact of the matter is he's actually been quite hot for the price the last couple of weeks there. He's actually finished 17th or better in each of the last four races, and that includes North Wilkesboro there, too.
I would, like I said, you could easily talk me into him, Sean, and you basically have. So I'm with you, bro. You know what? We even overlap a whole pile on our bets this week too. And even the ones that you don't mind, I'm with you on. I mean, it's a little crazy. Again, I'm kind of on the fade Kyle Larson plan at this point. That may change for me. So I'm not on Kyle Larson. I just want that clear. I'm okay with it. I am not at 550. It's good odds. I'm in agreement with Sean's logic. I just can't shake my gut feeling. So just like on the top tier drivers, I'm leaning on Ryan Blaney at 850. I may come off that bet. I'm very twisted on Ryan Blaney. I almost like the fact I'm twisted on it because I feel like the speed's starting to come around, but I'm not sure I want to go that angle. Joey Logano at plus 900, or I guess maybe he moved to 800. I thought he was plus 900 at one point.
He's in that still same plus 900.
Okay. Plus 900. I like that bet a little bit better, to be honest. I feel like Joey just seems like he knows where he's at and what's going on. Kyle Busch is kind of an oddball one. I don't like going back-to-back winners. My thoughts on Kyle Busch, he's angry. The team's frustrated. They know what it takes to run well here. They've done it in this car. He's done it at Joe Gibbs in this car. He's done it with RCR in this car. At 1,100, I feel like his odds are just out of line. Probably my favorite bet, though, William Byron at plus 900. I was really torn between William Byron and Martin Truex. I think I like Truex more for a top 5, top 3 thing. Byron, again, they bounced back last week and kind of got me thinking, watch out for the 24 again.
That's fair and valid. I think overall with your choices, I mean, like you said, you're twisted on Ryan Blaney. I'm a little twisted on Ryan Blaney as well. Kyle Busch, he's got the history here. He's RCR. They could pick it back up this week. The intermediate package is what they've been at their best with. So he could be one to watch here too. And for the odds, I would consider taking a chance on that. But I especially like the Logano and Byron calls. I don't mind the Logano call, especially because he's a former winner at this track. Penske does very well here usually. And Byron, that 24 team, they've been bringing the speed. They've just been good on all sorts of tracks. I could see them having another good result there. And I'm not just saying that because Byron is on my list there too. So let's not get it twisted now. But I do like Byron a lot there too at plus 900. Kyle Larson at plus 550. I think Larson's going to be one of the top favorites, especially now that Hendrick has more of an established rule book at this place. So I'd say you can just take it and still feel comfortable about the chances with that one. I like MTJ at plus 900. And then the most ridiculous bet of them all, and this is having me scratch my head about the sports books because this is kind of my so-called long shot with deeper odds, but it's Ross Chastain at plus 2,000, man. What is going on with those odds?
He hasn't won yet. He hasn't had a bunch of top 5s in the last month. That said, I think there's been an overcorrection or an overreaction. I think what the books and DFS and FanDuel too, because of the way he performed last year and the year before, I think his price and odds had been overvalued or inflated. And look, you and I know this. Cyclical in racing. Trackhouse is going to come back. They were here. They kind of went here. They're kind of here. They're going to come back. We're seeing both him and Suarez running consistently in the top 10 again. They've just, in my opinion, everyone's just overcorrected on Ross Chastain. The odds are so silly. I would say maybe consider a $3, $4, $5 bet anyway, or at least on a top 5 for Ross, because at a top 5 odds, you're probably getting plus 350 or something on him. Plus 550, I'd have to look.
It plus is 2,000. Plus 260 for a top 5 on Ross.
Yeah, I mean at plus 2,000, 20 to 1. It's just it's he's underpriced. It's not right in my opinion.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. Let's quickly go through our DFS core 4s here. You got yourself William Byron, Justin Haley, Chris Buescher, and Joey Logano there, Rich. What are your thoughts on this core 4?
I think Haley's a free square right now, so it's hard not to use. I really want it, and I could come off of Chris Buescher, quite frankly. I'd like to get an RFK driver in. They're both a little higher priced than I liked. I wouldn't mind maybe going down to Ross Chastain because of the price point, or even Bubba Wallace if I wanted to save some money so I could go after another top-tier guy. Look, I think William Byron's the best. We've talked so much about him. His price point for where we feel about him like Mark likes to compare odds. William Byron's underpriced compared to his odds. So I like William Byron as an anchor. I think Joey Logano is underpriced at 9,300. And we talked about, hey, if we're going to take a shot on a Team Penske guy, both of us would agree we'd go Logano over Blaney, especially if you're going to save $1,300. So, or $1,500. So give me Logano. So I'm on Byron, Haley, Chris Buescher, and Joey Logano. Oh, and I did finally get FanDuel unlocked. I will have FanDuel numbers next week.
Woo! It's been a while coming. Bravo, Rich. Bravo. All right. I'm just going to get into my DFS Core 4 here, which basically I have Kyle Larson, 11,000 on DraftKings, 13,500 on FanDuel. He's the second most expensive driver on both sites behind Denny Hamlin. Like that a lot. Ross Chastain, as mentioned, 8,200 on DraftKings, 8,000 flat on FanDuel. That price is just ridiculous for him on FanDuel, especially. I mean, wow. Justin Haley, 5,700 on DraftKings, 3,500 on FanDuel. He's performing at a much better level compared to 5,700. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Now, for my last pick, though, I split depending on the site. For DraftKings, I'd say go with Josh Berry at 7,200. Noah Gragson, I like him better for FanDuel at 7,000. Berry's cheaper on DraftKings. Gregson's cheaper on FanDuel. Both, I think, are going to have similar levels of performance. Can probably net you a top 15 and still have a little bit of cap flexibility left over. So I like those guys in those positions.
I'm in total agreement. I was going to say Berry's about $300 less on DraftKings, so I get the move there. And I assume it's probably something comparable on FanDuel in the other direction. So that makes complete sense to me. Look, when we have overlap, Sean, it usually works well. I'm hoping it does this week. I may come around on the Kyle Larson. We'll talk about it in Discord, I'm sure. I may get scared off of Logano or Blaney at some point, or even Buescher. We'll see after practice and qualifying. I'm definitely starting to take a little more. I tell you what, one thing I'm watching more of, though, is qualifying. Because the interviews at qualifying, we're getting some good information from the drivers themselves as far as their cars and other cars they see. Also, it's been huge for dominators to start races. Every race for the last month that I could go back and see, anywhere from 30 to 40 laps were led by somebody qualifying in the top 4 or 5. They may not have finished there, but they finished typically in the top 10, and they got the fastest laps and laps led bonuses at some point. So I'll be honest, Sean, qualifying, I never really used to care to watch qualifying, and now it's kind of turned into a staple.
Yeah, especially because it's one of the few, let's say, places where we can get consistent info and accurate info that's like up to date about how the drivers feel and teams feel about their cars and their chances for the main event.
I would agree. Well, everybody, this has been a fun RaceGuru Thunder Hour, even with the mic mix-up and some other longer things taking on. But apologize from me to you for that. Sean, love it, as always. We got tons of content dropping at fantasyguru.com. The NFL draft guide is going to be dropping shortly. There is a ton of content from everybody there. Sean is working on all sorts of stuff. I don't know if you guys realize this, but every podcast, every live stream, all those, Sean is behind them all. So hat tip to Sean. Make sure you check out all of those. Give us a like, a subscribe, a follow on the YouTube channel. Remember, you can watch all this free there. But if you want all the content, you want all the access, join fantasyguru.com. Click the subscribe button, get into our Discord, and we will be more than happy to talk NASCAR and all things racing. On behalf of Sean Engel, I am Rich Maletto. You can find Sean on Twitter at SeanE247. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyBosco, all spelled out. Sean, it's been fun. Till next time. Peace.